everybody. My name's Stephen Bowles, and you're listening to the Production Channel, where we bring you the latest, greatest around the industry, audio, video, lights, technical, news, broadcast, sports, the whole thing.
All that good stuff.
And so all the goodies. And so I'm joined by my good friend here, Clem Herod. Welcome, Clem.
Yo, greetings. Hello.
So, Clem, real quick before we talk about who we got on today, which I'm really excited about that. For anyone who's new, listening to Production Channel, tell them, what are we doing here? What is the Production Channel?
Well, Production Channel is just a place for us to gather as a community, talk about our industry, talk about our lives, talk about the things that matter, talk about new technology, how we got our start, where do we see ourselves going, all the things that you want to talk about or feel the need to talk about with a coworker, not during show.
That's right. Basically, all the stuff either you're talking on a private channel backstage or you wish you could talk about, but your show is too busy and so you didn't get a chance to actually just hang around and catch up with different peeps. So anyways, that's awesome. Basically, we're here to talk about you guys, talk about this industry. And today we're joined by and with Steve Mitchell. Steve Mitchell's with the Audio Distillery, so welcome, Steve.
Hey, guys.
So Steve, just a little bit of background on him. He is, 20 years audio engineer, A1, A2, A3, A1, A2, A4, all of them. And he's worked with really a wide range of parts of the industry, everything from doing music and a little bit of stuff on his own, but also with Disney, doing really big events with them back in the day, then LMG, and now even broke out freelance and now working for the Audio Distillery. So with that, Clem, get us started with Steve.
Hey, everybody, we're here with Steve Mitchell, #1 audio guy in the nation. So
That's
I've been
right.
told.
I
guess so he's told us.
Oh, no.
That's right. I saw him tweet it the other day.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I'm not even on Twitter.
Yeah, because Steve Mitchell's a tweeter guy. Yeah.
Twitter.
Twitter.
So Steve, man, just give us some background on how you became interested in this industry. How did you get your start?
Well, funny story, I guess is when I was really little. My dad was a musician, and I was running around the studio, and I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to play guitar and stuff like that, and my mother, with a worried head, didn't want me to go that route. So, because she, had to witness kind of what was going on. It's tough to be a musician. And I remember her saying, "Look at this guy over here. He's, moving these faders, and that's kind of cool too, And I, ignored her all the way up into my teenage years, trying to still be a rock star. Mm-hmm. And
did you have long hair back then, Steve?
Oh yeah, man, I did.
Did you really? Oh, I have to see that photo.
I'll have to get you a picture. It's pretty tragic, but yeah, I had a lot of fun, and realized keeping a band together is like herding cats. So I quickly started doing studio work, and my dad, I've always joked, he's like the Sanford and Son of musical equipment. He's always had recording stuff. It's almost like borderline hoarding, but it is pretty cool stuff he's got. And he had some old reel-to-reels and stuff like that, and that's what I would record band demos on for the guys in high school. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's all I've ever really done. I worked in a music store, worked in the studio in the back, and stuff like that. So it's pretty much all I've ever done.
And then how'd you get into the live side of it, into the actual show side of it?
That was weird too. I went to school for recording industry, and I thought I wanted to work Middle Tennessee State. So there's a lot of guys that have gone there. Shane Smith and Brian T. A lot of great audio guys that come out of there. Ironically enough, and I didn't know these guys when we were going there. We didn't know each other until later.
Were you there around the same time?
Yeah, we were. That's
Wow.
the crazy part.
Small industry.
I know. And so we all went there, and we went to school for working in a recording studio. And by the time we got out, I don't know about them, but I was so tired of going in the studio when the sun went down and coming out when the sun came up that I said, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And it's sad to come out of spending all money on college and, saying, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. But it was a hard road ahead there too, because, even though you come out of college, you're going to go spend a couple of years as an intern and just, making coffee for anybody and everybody to to go any further with it. But so finally, I, as a bet or a dare from a roommate of mine, Disney came into town and was doing interviews, and he said that'd be funny if you interviewed. And I was like, why would that be funny? He's like, because you got long hair and they would never hire you. so he's like, I'll buy the beers later at the bar if you go. And he's like, it'll be entertaining for me to see you interview, and But so I went, and I guess I had a car too, so that's why.
Oh yeah, you're the guy with the car.
He just needed a ride. Is what it was.
Right.
And so I interviewed, and forgot all about it. And about 6 months later, they called and said, "Hey, you want to come down to Orlando and work for Disney?" And it was pretty crazy. And then
how long were you there?
I was only at Disney for 4 years. As a lot of us came from that same department and that area. There's so many of us, and they were all great guys, and it was a great time, and met so many great people. But I was only there for 4 years because I think they were in the process of dissolving the department. The biggest experience I say I got from working at Disney is what it feels like to work for a company that is so huge, and just feel like a small fish in a pond. And when somebody says, it doesn't make sense that we do it that way, it's just how we do it. And I learned to accept that.
Yeah.
So the goods and the bads.
Yeah, and that kind of makes me question, like, at what point, or have you changed that mindset of the whole, this is how we do things? Because not just in our industry, so many different industries, the same mentality is that's just the way things are done. And then it seems like nowadays a lot of people are beginning to question that. Well, why is it done that way? Is there a more efficient way? Is that something that you still believe in, that this is just the way things are done?
I'm able to spot somebody when they're in a bind and they're working for a big company, as far as our clients and stuff like that. And when they feel like, I can see that their hands are tied, and you can tell they want to make a difference. They want to change some stuff, but they can't. And when they turn to you, and in the heat of the battle, they're just like, man, it's just the way we do things. I'm able to say, okay, I understand, this, I'll help you out, and we'll do whatever we can. But as far as me and working for myself, I think that was one of the blessings of it all, is to say, to be able to ask why. If there's ever a question you ever use in life, is to ask why about a lot of stuff. And, it's one of the things I try and teach my daughter, is like, it's okay to ask why. And if we can't explain it, maybe we need to be doing a better job. But anyway, it's I try not to get bogged down in that mentality. I don't have to, as far as what I do personally, but I do have to recognize that with some of these bigger companies that we work for. They're just like, that's just the way it goes. That's the way we do it. And it's easier to accept it instead of getting really frustrated. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does. I mean, I know I tend to work with one specific company, and when I work with other people who have experience working with other companies, other production companies, it's nice to learn, new techniques and new ways to do things, because it may be more efficient, may be more effective, and then you can bring it, then that becomes part of your setup or your, process, and being able to share that with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think I think a lot of these big companies, you see them bogged down in the big corporate aspect of things. And I think when they get to work with you or myself or, excuse me, a lot of the guys in the industry, I think it's a breath of fresh air to that we're not bogged down in that, and we kind of think outside of the box, and we're able to laugh and joke and bring a little more fun to that, cubicle, stuck in a cubicle mentality.
Yeah. It's not a cubicle, but it is at the same time.
Yeah. Right.
So Steve, you recently went freelance, right? In terms of your kind of professional career.
I guess it's been about 5 years now, 4 or 5 years, something like that. So yeah, I guess relatively speaking, recently, yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess just in the spectrum of your whole thing. Well, actually, here, let me take that again, actually, because you're right. I was totally thinking Jay when I just said that. So
Yeah.
ask you that question.
Now, about to
I was
say, yeah, it's been a
thinking
while.
Jay the other day. It's been a long while. I'll take that one around again. Here we go. So, Steve, you've been basically freelance for the last 5 years, but before that, you had experience working for like a larger sort of rental and staging or production company, LMG. I actually used to work for them, so love the company, love everybody who works there. But talk to me about that. Like, you went from Disney, right, where you're a part of the massive machine and you almost have no ability. Then you're at LMG, where there's room, to sort of apply your own processes. It's a smaller, more nimble team, but then also LMG grew a lot while you're there. And now you're on your own, where you're kind of either working directly with clients or receiving gigs through groups like LMG and others like that. Just talk to us a little bit about that change from one to the other.
Yeah, it was I'd say overall it was a really great experience. I guess Disney, and a lot of people, this is not news to a lot of people that are in the industry, but Disney was kind of the breeding ground for a lot of the LMG employees. Like they were able to cut their teeth and learn a lot there, work with a lot of high-end gear, and when they were ready, LMG would offer them definitely a better deal, and that wasn't hard to do, but they could, and for me, it wasn't just about the money. It was also about following a lot of those great guys I worked with at Disney. They were already over there working at LMG, and I mean, guys like Kevin Bridges, Bryce Hirschner, those guys. I just wanted to stay working with those guys. We all had a lot of laughs. We had a lot of fun. We always learned from each other, and those guys were always pushing themselves to do more stuff and learn more stuff as well. I mean, Bryce Hirschner is just one of the most motivated guys I've ever worked for and worked with. But so it was kind of like, hey, come work with your friends, Yeah. And I said yeah, and I was also freelance with some other companies, but finally took the dive into the full-time job with LMG, and I was there for almost 10 years, and you got to watch the company grow. It's definitely, then everything was done on a handshake, and small time, more boutique type of mentality. And then as they grew, things weren't a handshake anymore. There was more paperwork involved and stuff like that. But it's a great company, and they're growing in leaps and bounds for sure, and doing amazing things. And I think it got to a certain point. I just said, you know what? I think I still like that small time mentality, and the more stuff you get into where you're just doing it because that's just the way things are, and you're able to get away from that a little bit and do your own thing. I think it was just time for me. So, but that's great because I still get to work with those guys. I still get to work. They have great gear. There's a lot of companies that have great gear, and now I'm also able to work with all different companies that have great gear and great guys. So I'd say that's a benefit.
Sorry, as you were speaking about great gear, and with LMG, they have a lot of things coming in and going out, and a lot of changing equipment and staying abreast on technology. How do you, as a freelancer or independent contractor, stay abreast with gear changing and technology? Do you take classes, or you just kind of learn on site? What do you do for that?
That's one thing I want to get better at. It's taking more time. You have to take more of a conscious effort to set, book your own flight to go to a class, or to take that time out in your downtime in the summer to go do those classes and learn those things, or going to a gig a day early because it's in a city where one of the companies is, and you're able to go in their shop and check out their new consoles or whatever they are. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot more of a conscious effort to do that, as opposed to when I was working for a company, they would just schedule training, or I lived close by to the shop, and I would just be able to go in and check stuff out. Now, granted, there's shops here too, here in Nashville, so that I've been able to do that as well. But I need to make a more conscious effort to do it. It's just in downtime when you have a family, you want to soak in all that downtime with your family, and it's hard to say, oh yeah, I gotta go grow my brain, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things too that, and I actually want to jump back to that family stuff in a little bit, but when I used to work at LMG, I think one of the craziest parts when you work for a group that's large and has that many different events going on all the time is you get this wide spectrum of roles, and not in the sense of like I'm an A1 or an A2, I'm a video director or a video engineer from show to show. That certainly happens. It's more of the gig and the size of the event or the show has such a wide range, right? So you might be one week, the A1, or for me, directing some really massive arena show. And then literally the next week, you're in the back of some breakout room doing a video screen control switcher or something like that, some Davintix, and you're just going between playback and, graphics or whatever it is. So talk to me about that, because like for you, when you entered into LMG or came out of Disney, had you even done those sort of large arena level kind of shows? What kind of like growth did you find in yourself during that period of time? And then since you went freelance, what is your kind of show of preference? Like, what do you like to do more? Do you like to do big shows that are hard and complex, or would you rather do smaller ones but hang with your friends in a really cool spot in Tahoe, like the more niche kind of events? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Let's see, I'll start with I was doing some arena stuff, big stuff with Disney, and before I left, and then with some of the freelance companies I was working with as well, because I was able to moonlight and kind of take time off and go do other stuff. But excuse me, it was I was doing a lot of that stuff. There was a lot of things that at LMG that made me grow, as far as you have to be super responsible for making sure all the gear gets back. It's not like it's just going right down the road. It's going on a tractor trailer and it's going across country. They held you responsible dealing with the unions. I mean, I had a crazy story in Boston with the Teamsters. It was funny. I'm sure everybody's got a story like that, but but it's challenging. There's other parts about it that have no technical aspect to them, but just really just dealing with people and making sure everybody's happy and that you're able to just get the gear from one place to another and get the gig done. As far as
real quick, do you feel that at LMG or working for a company like that, there was more of this manager part to the job as opposed to just being the lead audio guy and really focusing on the rig and loading in and getting your stuff set up, getting your world set up? Do you feel like that was different than Disney and different than freelance?
Yeah, different than Disney, not different than freelance. I definitely experienced some of that in freelance world. It's still about dealing with the labor unions or the labor companies that are there, making sure the stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of management. And speaking of which, I mean, one of the things that I've always said to a lot of people, it's not, and I think it goes with all your guys' industry as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of what we do isn't just the technical side or the technical side of our shows. A lot of what we do is managing risk. And it's whether managing risk of, a machine failing, a projector failing, a playback machine failing, a microphone failing. It's managing that risk because, we all know how bad it goes if you don't have something to back it up with. So it's definitely a shift in mentality. There's a lot of guys that get caught up in the artistic side of it, and they're like, well, this is what I do. I mix, and that's all I do. And I want to make it sound the best. And it's like, well, that microphone is the best, but you don't have a backup to it that sounds just as good. So, you might have to dumb it down a little bit just to make sure that everything's covered. But to go back to another question you had as far as doing different things all the time. I found it was interesting. You can kind of get pigeonholed into certain seats. And that can be hard because it makes you rusty in the other seats. I got pigeonholed doing more front of house stuff. I guess it came easier for me in dealing with the client and making stage managers feel good or comfortable. But I tell you what, it made it hard to, stay up on my chops as far as A2 work and stuff like that. But I do enjoy the smaller shows because they pay the same and they're a lot less headache. A lot
less risk to manage.
Right. And when I was younger, that was exciting, right? I'm going to go in an arena and put this rig in the round and, it's going to be incredible and all that. But I tell you what, after a while, sometimes that's just, you get paid the same to do, even a smaller gig too.
I know for me, sometimes I like to do the smaller shows, and I enjoy doing the smaller shows. But sometimes it's nice to get in there and do that arena show just to be like, yeah, I still got it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, you wonder, like, man, it's been a while since I've been in an arena. Exactly. And then you go back into the arena, and you're like, okay, yeah, it's like riding a bike. And luckily, and I saw that show you did, Clem, that looked awesome. And you were able to actually probably get a little more fulfillment out of the artistic side of it when you're able to do the projection stuff that you were doing, and that's cool. And when you're able to take advantage of that and feel good about that side of it, that's great, because there's a lot of times where just the artistic side gets sucked out of it with a corporate thing.
One thing I learned from that show was, when you do bigger shows, you get to an opportunity to work with people who are on your same level too, because just the demand, the project, the scale of it is so much larger than your smaller rooms where you might be by yourself and just have some stagehands helping you out. Where I was working on that arena show, and the gentleman I was working with, he was, somewhat impressed by my ability to, warp and managing the tool set. But as we were having our conversation, I was impressed by his just knowledge of the different lamps that the brands of projectors use, and the ability to, his ability to understand the light temperature or the color temperature that each lamp produces. And it was just like, when you're working around other techs on some of those larger scales shows, it's just like that opportunity to grow, and that exchange of knowledge is beautiful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to take it a step further, I've kind of learned working with different generations is started to open my mind a little bit of how to think about things. The younger generations, the millennial guys and stuff like that, I think, at first I'd get frustrated with how they would work and stuff like that. But then I started realizing, man, they just think about it differently than I do. And there's some things that are pretty cool how they think about this. And they're still very skilled at what they do. It's just they approach it a little bit different. So not to go too deep into that, but I totally agree with you. I love working with other people and be able to pick up on what they know and what they do. I learned something. If you're not learning something, then it gets boring, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I think that the reality of it is that once you get sort of established in the industry, enough people know about you, either production companies or rental houses know about you, and they're just booking you on gigs all the time, and then you got your regular client list, and they're sort of filling a good percentage of your book. That repetition game comes into play. And I guess the question to you, Steve, or something to think about, really for all three of us, but when you get bored, and that's kind of what we're talking about, how do you stretch yourself, or how do you entertain yourself? And I think for me personally, when I was directing cameras, and I actually got highly just totally bored, because every gig's the same. For me, it was just another CEO or another VP of whatever up on the stage, and I gotta put a tight shot, a head-to-toe shot, and a wide shot. Go around the bases, and it's pretty much the same thing every single time. And so, for me, whether it is an arena show or not, that actually didn't change too much what was going on in terms of what I had to do. It would be, though, when I had music, or bands.
Right.
That's fun, right?
Essence.
For video
Didn't you do the
particular.
Essence Music
That's
Festival once?
Oh heck yeah, man! I've done Essence. Honestly, the way
Final
I
Four?
measure Final Four, yeah, the way I measure a lot of like my like value in terms of like dinner table conversation with my friends and my family is never around. Oh my gosh, I shot the CEO of IBM the other day or anything like that. It's
No
always
doubt.
I
No
had
doubt.
Fall Out Boy or I had this Aerosmith or whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess to you, Steve, and this is kind of maybe even pressing like a little sensitive button, but often from what I've seen, the A1 brought in to mix the corporate event doesn't necessarily get to mix the rock and roll often. So how have you sort of navigated that? How much does that, suck or not suck, I guess is the question.
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes, but and it like I've joked, I say this, sometimes it sucks the soul out of you, but but there's times I get to do a lot of that too, and then on my own I started mixing bands and stuff like that and getting back into that moonlighting, so to speak, and doing other things, and it's hard because we spend so much time working in the corporate industry, and when you come home, like I said, with your family, to say I want to go out and do this, and it's not going to pay as well as the corporate stuff, and so it's more time away, but that it's better for your soul. It's better for you to branch out. And to go back to your original question, how do you stretch yourself and how do you do those things? It's a lot of people are self-motivated. Steve, you definitely one. You've branched out with show flow and things of that nature to keep things interesting. I remember I had a high school music director one time, and I told him, man, I'm just bored with this. I don't think I want to do this anymore. And that was in high school, and he put it in perspective for me. He had been a music director for 40 years, 30 years, something like that. And he said, do you think at one point in time I didn't get bored in that 30 years with what I was doing? And he was like, even though he's high school music director, he was known throughout the country as one of the best. And I think every time he got bored, he said it's on me to figure out how to challenge myself, to figure out a new way to grow myself. He says nobody else is going to do that for you. So if you're not doing it for yourself, and if you're not stretching yourself and challenging yourself and figuring out how to make it not boring anymore, then you're kind of cutting your legs off. You're really selling yourself short. And that stuck with me ever since high school. I've never forgotten that. Teachers have a lot of influence over kids and the things they say. So that really stuck with me, and he helped me out throughout my early stages of doing audio and stuff, of how to motivate and get busy and get on it, and don't slack, and stay motivated. So I give a lot of credit to him. But anyway, yeah, it makes it tough. You have to do it. Whether you do less, or have a little less money, do a little less corporate to push yourself to do some of these other projects that you want to do. I think it's well worth longevity, keeping your longevity in the business, or surviving in the business. And, the definition of making it in the business is making a living doing what you love to do.
Yeah.
But,
in another way, thinking about that monotony and how not to be bored I've kind of thought about that myself and try to figure out how. That's one of the reasons why I left my career is shooting sports. I shot in Magic games for 15 seasons, but I was just getting bored with it, and I just wasn't feeling fulfilled in that. So one thing that I've started to do is when we're out on these shows and we're gone from our family, I'm trying to take time to get to know the people that I'm working with more. Stop having that surface relationship. Let's
Absolutely.
get deep. Tell me about your background. How did you get here? Kind of the whole purpose of the production channel, in a way, for us to reach out and try to get to know each other better and understand how the struggles that we go through in this industry and how we can support one another. How can we help each other to have that work-life balance, or to push through a challenging situation and not get stressed out, and to feel that sense of fulfillment. I started Facebook groups for video projectionists, just so that we can have something somewhere to go to support one another, help each other. When we're trying to figure out a new piece of gear, we might be stuck, or even the classes that I'm beginning to start teaching, Projection 101, just to help that next generation come up and have a sense of I'm doing it, but I don't know why I'm doing it, but it seems to work out at the end, but
it's super awesome. I think it's so smart, and I think it allows. And you know what, the younger generation coming up wanting to do this stuff, they've got to be so thankful, because a lot of us didn't have a lot of that,
Right,
so
exactly.
Good on you for that. That's just amazing. And I think, the sense of community, it is a small industry, relatively speaking, right? So I think if we're all taking care of one another, it's kind of a good thing. And there's some unwritten rules, right? There's some respect on people's clientele and things of that nature that is always important. And if you don't show the younger generation the benefits of that, in the unwritten rules, how else are they going to know it, right? And how else are they going to appreciate it? So
right.
I think it's awesome. It's definitely a smart thing to do, and it also, like you said, a little more fulfillment as far as when it comes to people, and not just this technical side we do.
Yeah. If you invest in people, you'll be a lot more wealthier than investing in gear.
Yeah, and to put it in perspective, I've had other friends that work, desk jobs, and they say, "Oh man, I wish my job was as cool as your job." I hear that. I'm sure you guys hear that sometimes too. And when I said, and I can't take credit for this quote. Actually, I got to give Kevin Bridges quote for this, or credit for this quote. He said, "I don't want it to say on my tombstone, 'Here lies the greatest audio guy ever.'" So, so that puts in perspective, like, sometimes it's what you do to, make a living and pay for your, family and your kids, because ultimately it's a job, I mean, it's important, no doubt about it, but it's a job, and family and people are more important, and friends are more important at the end of the day than just what we do for a living, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool, man. So tell us a little bit about just Steve Mitchell. Where are you based out of? Talk to us a little about your family. You mentioned you have a little girl. How's the whole work-life world? How do you make all that work?
Well, thankfully, I got to say I have a very, very understanding wife. That she is probably that's a blessing all in itself, is having somebody with you that understands and is okay with the business and being traveling and stuff like that. And from the outsider perspective looking in, it looks like we're gone all the time, but that's not always the case. There's times where we're home for a month at a time, or a couple weeks at a time, and that's quality time. Like, I'm home, and it we're doing whatever my daughter wants to do, whatever my family wants to do. We're trying to take advantage of that time, and it might not be technically in the vacation season, but we may go take a vacation on a week, here or there, and to answer where we're at, we're just outside of Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin area. And, since we moved here, things are a little more, slower pace than Orlando. We were living in Orlando for 15 years, and schools are a little bit smaller and things of that nature. And I think it just kind of fits my wife's lifestyle and mine as well. It's just a little more laid back, a little less fast paced, because we're always working in cities that are fast paced anyway. So
it allows you to downshift when you get home.
Yeah, exactly. We're able to see some wildlife outside and stuff like that, and that's fun. Yeah, exactly. Just kind of roll it back a few notches, and so it works out.
That's a common thing you hear, where people, our industry, like, we're traveling to Vegas, right? Whatever, 8 times a year, or to Manhattan, or to Orlando, but then we're coming home to these, like, quieter, smaller places. I think people like friends of ours that are in Montana,
Right.
or Tommy, who's got like, or used to have a cabin up in North Carolina. I think he's in Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
But point being, like, that whole approach of I go to the busy to go work, but then I retreat, to the quiet and to my home and to my family. I think that's fascinating. Anytime I think about some of these production companies, like the agency ones in like New York City, the idea of chaos in the city or the busyness of that, even like in your office, then you're going to the show, or it's another type of, sort of busy, frantic chaos.
Yeah.
And then when you come home, you're still coming home, and you're going to the office and working inside this, a place. And so again, we need those sort of production companies to exist, because those are the ones who sort of book the gigs, and then, we get to come out on them. But particularly on this call, the three of us, where it's more of either show operators or vendors, we don't have to do that, right? We get to just go and then be off, and then go and then be off, which is, that is, I think, one of the more beautiful parts of this industry. To an extent, we're almost like performers or talent, where like you're on and then you're off, and not to like say that we like juggle balls, and we come back, and, but it is to an extent like we have these on periods and then we have off. And we were doing a call with Richard Dunn, and I'm sure this applies to you too, Steve, where when you're home, even though you're off, you sort of still are on, you're emailing or you're doing conference calls, things like that. But I mean, the on in relation to, I'm a producer on staff with a production company, and when I come home, I actually go back to the office where there's 50 people doing conference meetings all the time and preparing for the next, 20 gigs this year. It's just a very different type of like off. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm still working on drawings and, paperwork and stuff like that for my next gig. But I can kind of pick and choose when I want to do that. When my daughter goes to bed, and I can take advantage of that time at night where, and during the day I can, spend all the time with her. So it's definitely, we found a way to balance it. And my wife, thankfully, is very accepting of it. And she's been so great about it. She's kind of very familiar with the business. So it's, when you find somebody else who's okay with it, you can make it work,
Yeah.
Steve, does your wife work?
She did for a long, long time when we were in Orlando, and since we moved to Nashville, we just haven't had a chance to get to know as many businesses and stuff like that. So she hasn't been working; she's been at home. But it's been great. It's been a blessing for our daughter because she's able to concentrate more on helping her with school and stuff like that, and we've watched her really just thrive on it, and she's just eating it up, and it seems like a good time for her to be doing that right now. So she misses working, and she misses being a career woman, but she also loves this too. So I always tell her it's up to her. Whatever she wants to do, I'm fine with, but I think we both know that our daughter's just eating it up right now, that she's home. So
that's cool. Well, hey, Steve, so just kind of a fun last one. Do you have any good war stories or anything like that? Rig fell out of the sky, or CEO's mic dropped out. Do you have any go-to war stories?
Oh, my goodness. It's so hard to pick
There's
one.
Too many.
There was, I guess if I go back far enough, then there's, we're not legally bound to any kind of trouble. There's some kind of statute of limitations. So if I go back to like Disney days or something like that, I think I'll tell a story about that. We had we talked about IBM. It was a high exec of IBM, and they wanted to do this big what they called a magic mirror reveal. And it's funny, if anybody listens to this, they're going to be like, "Don't tell that story." But there was a technician that their job was to pull the magic mirror, and there was this flash pot that was supposed to go off, and then that technician was supposed to tell them, okay, now it's okay to step through this magic mirror, and then once they step through and the smoke cleared, the mirror would be closed, and magically he appears, right? They were always about this gimmicky stuff, Disney. They were all about it. The problem was I think they were a little understaffed, and so the technician, in order to just pull this big sliding mirror, it was all they could do. They had to muscle into it, and so the cue came. They heard it on the headset, and they pulled the mirror. And when they went back to tell the CEO or executive when to walk forward, the CEO walked forward as soon as the mirror moved. So nonetheless, he walked right through a flash pot and singed the snot out of his suit.
Oh no!
As his eyebrows, everything, right? And
my gosh.
yeah, within minutes, they had suits from all over. Probably the legal team probably flew in from California or something like that really fast to, please don't sue us. And
Oh my goodness.
but it was funny, and thankfully the guy had a really good. He was okay, and he had a really good sense of humor about it. The next day when he came out on stage, he brought a fire extinguisher with him and set it down next to the podium. So I was like, that guy's a good sport. Of course, he's probably got lifelong Disney tickets from here on out. But
Right.
But yeah. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's a good one. I like it.
has nothing to do with audio either. So
And most of them don't. That's the funny thing.
Yeah, it was not my department.
Right.
exactly.
Well, that's cool,
So,
man. Well, Steve, I really appreciate you joining us today, man. This was awesome.
No, I appreciate it. It's an honor to talk to you guys. I love seeing you guys and working with you guys, and I'm sure I'll see Clem here before too long. Hopefully,
bud.
I come back
right.
to Orlando. I'll visit you in your office there, Steve.
Yeah, you should. I know I don't get to gig as much anymore, but hey, I get to go to a normal 9-to-5 job. Only it's way more fun and interesting.
Yeah,
So,
it's cool,
love it.
man. Yeah, you got a great gig, man. I love it. Well, thank you guys very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Well, hey, again, you guys been listening to the production channel. This is the kind of stuff you get. This is real stories from real people around our industry. So we really just appreciate you today, Steve. And for everybody else out there, if you have a great idea or a great war story or something you want to share, please do reach out to Clem or I, and we'd love to get you on here. With that said, we'll catch you guys next week on the production channel.
Chatter.